My name is George Esquibel, ceramic instructor at Sacramento City College. I've been teaching ceramics for 25 years. I'd like to give you a demonstration on wheel throwing today, but before I start, I'd like to show you a crude kind of example of a early type of potter's wheel. I've made this thing up, probably a bit larger than this and maybe a little bit thicker, made out of stone with a point on one end, which was probably wood. And on this is the throwing side. It would have holes around the circumference, and the pot would have sat in the middle, and by use of a peg you would insert in these holes and keep it spinning. You could see a potter's wheel like this would require a lot of dexterity. When clay is manufactured, it is run through a process where it is possible that there may be air enclosed in the clay, and what we want to do is to remove that air through a process called kneading or wedging, which is to take clay and to slam it down and revolving it slowly. Eventually that would remove the air if we had enough time. The kneading process is much quicker, and we want to learn that process. And what we'd like to do is to hold the clay on the side, put your hands on here, and then we want to push down in a way and then lift the clay back up again. You should be right in the position to go back down again, down in a way, and keep that motion going. Notice that the hands are on the side, and that will keep this from hot dogging out or to get too long. Keep a slight pressure on the sides so that it doesn't get away from you. If you're kneading correctly, you should kind of get this kind of little face on here, a little kind of creature, and that means that this little bottom part, the tongue, is what's revolving and slowly releasing the air. You'll notice there's a revolving motion going this way, and that's what we want to do. We want to keep that motion going. Now, it is possible to push too hard the lobes of the hand here into this area here and actually create an air pocket, and I'll give you a demonstration of that. If you push too hard here, you'll notice there's an indentation there, and then when the clay folds over, you'll create an air pocket. So you have to be gentle with this and move. Don't get too much pressure on it, but enough to keep it revolving. And now you can see the clay making a spiral here. Okay, now that this is kneaded, we are going to take it on the potter's wheel and create a pot out of it. I first wanted to talk a little bit about the potter's wheels. Most modern potter's wheels are controlled by a foot switch that is a rheostat, somewhat like a dimmer switch in your house. That is, it controls the amount of electricity that goes to the motor. They're fairly quiet, and you can run these wheels at a moderate or fast and allow the wheel to stay at that speed. Some wheels are reversible. That is for the purpose that some people are left-handed, and if you are right-handed, the wheel, you would want it to go counterclockwise, as you see here. And if you had a reverse switch, you then would be going in a clockwise position for the left-handed person. This clay, as I mentioned, has been kneaded, and I'm ready to proceed. The first thing is you want to remove all your jewelry. Clay is very abrasive, and the likelihood of losing your jewelry as you amass clay on your table is probably pretty high, so you want to make sure you get rid of your jewelry, get it in your pockets. And so we're ready to go. And the most difficult aspect of wheel throwing is the centering of the clay, and that is to bring this mass into the center of this wheel head. I'm going to give several different ways of doing that. Each person is different. Each person will develop their own style. And the first way is to overlap the fingers and put the hands behind the clay. And the very important aspect of this is to have the arms braced either on your legs or on the wheel pan itself, whatever is the most convenient, but you must have a brace on both arms to center. If you don't do that, what will happen is the clay will just has a lot of leverage, and it will just take your hand back and forth, and you'll never center. So you must put up a resistance. You have to brace your arms. In order to start our throwing process, I'm going to take and slam the clay down to have it so that it will adhere to the wheel head. And I'm going to also push that a little further by pushing down and making sure I have good adhesion. Okay, so as I've mentioned, we're going to try several different ways of centering. And I'm going to, first of all, brace my arms, and I'm going to put my hands overlapping my fingers in the back, and I'm going to pull toward me. The whole idea of this process is to put a direct pressure and to come straight over what you approximate will be the center of the clay, is to push or pull in that direction towards you. And it may take a little. You have to have a little patience with the clay. And you'll notice now that we're coming to a point, and that's fine. That's what we want. We want to ultimately end up with a cone. We'll get behind the clay again. This takes several times to make sure that we center. We're ready to try the next approach, which is to center from the front of the clay. And instead of pulling this time, we're going to push away in the opposite direction. We're still go back to our brace on our legs or the wheel pan, and we'll push this time. Still coming up to a point. All right, then now we'll try the third technique for centering. We're going to knock the clay off again, and we're going to, this time, each hand is going to be independent of the other. So far, we've seen this technique where the hands are pulling toward us, the hands are pushing away. This time the hands will be independent, and each hand will be pressing inward. And I would say this is the least popular of the techniques, simply because if you are not able to control the strength in one arm over the other, you're liable to knock it off. In other words, you have to apply even pressure with both hands, and that's sometimes difficult to do. So here we go. Each hand is independent of the other. Come up and do our cone. And I think we're fairly centered. This is a phenomenon, however, that a lot of students find difficult, and that is knowing when they're centered. Obviously, if the clay is vibrating wildly, you know you're not in center. But when you get to this point where the line is very close here, it's difficult to tell. And one way that I tell students to try this will help them, and that is to close their eyes and to put their hands on the clay and rely on the senses of touch rather than the eyesight. Your eyesight can be misleading here. But if you put your clay, that is your hands on the clay, and close your eyes and try to sense the centerness or uncenterness of the clay, this is the best way. Let the senses, the feel of the hand, do that for you. And this is pretty good. Actually, I could work on it some more and get it a little bit more refined, but this is good enough for this. So now we're going to take the clay down in order to go on with the process. And here again there are several ways of taking this clay down. If it's a small piece, it is possible to use the thumbs over the top and holding on to the side. And that would proceed this way. You can see I'm laying the thumbs over the top. I'm not making a hole. I'm simply pushing down. Up to this point I haven't talked about the use of water. By adding more water it soaks up the moisture and it becomes weaker. And so therefore water is a lubricant for us, but it's also can destroy your piece if too much is applied. One way of telling whether you're using too much water is simply by the accumulation of water in the pan, and so you want to be careful that you use it frequently but small amounts of it. Notice I'm just sprinkling a few drops like that, and as I go along, that's the way that I'll continue to do it. Don't do this. Don't take a great big glob of water like this, and then now you'll notice that what will start to happen is the fine particles of clay are coming off, and this is what makes clay plastic, are the very fine particles of silica. So therefore you have to be very careful that you don't overuse water. All right, let's go back to we're taking the clay down, we're using our thumbs. So this is one technique. Another technique, and this is I think a little bit more popular one, and this is where the left hand braced to your leg, it's braced on the clay. Notice it's just sitting there now. The right hand comes over the left hand. This is if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, it would be exactly the opposite. And then now we press down. What the advantage to this is that you have more of your strength of your body, your weight of your body pushing down. The left hand is here to keep this from going out of control. If I try to just push down with one hand, eventually this clay will start to wobble. So I've got to keep that left hand right there, right on top. These two hands are touching, and I can take it down. It's very important to come down, not to throw the clay back off of center, because you've spent all that time centering, and now it is possible to take this down and be off center again, which means you'd have to come back up to our cone. So you want to make sure that you get this step right. Now what we're trying to do here is to take the clay down far enough so that we can, when we open, we don't reach down too far. But also this is kind of the basic start for all pieces right here, is this cake shape. If you look at this form, it'll slightly look like a cake, like a double layer cake, and that's what I tell my students. If you get it to a double layer cake look, you're ready to go. I've had this question asked by students, why don't I leave it higher? That way if I'm going to make a tall piece, I'll end up with a higher piece. That doesn't follow through. It actually is a handicap to get up much higher than this, because when we reach down we can lose control of the centerness, and that's what we intend to do now. We want to open this. We've spent a lot of time centering the outside, getting the clay balanced, and now we're ready to make a hole into this. If the hole is not in the center, we're going to end up with a wall that is thick and thin, and therefore a very weak piece and probably difficult to take anywhere. So what we want to do is make sure that we stay in the center. There's several ways to open, and I'll give a demonstration on both. Okay, you might want to, if your piece, now this one's difficult to open with the thumbs because it's a larger mass, but for a beginning student it would be a smaller amount of clay. But it is possible to hold the outside of the clay, let the hand kind of wet your hand, let it ride on the outside, and then take the thumbs and then point them down in, just like that. And make sure that the thumbs stay together. They have to stay together. If you let them split, what will happen is you'll end up with kind of a little island in there. So keep the thumbs together and then start pushing down. Your brace here is your arms, that is your legs again, and you're braced to your own clay with your fingers. And in this situation too, you also want to use a little bit more water than you normally wood because there's a lot of friction. The other way is where we're going to use one hand to make the hole. The left hand again is braced on the clay. It's riding the clay. Make sure it's slightly damp. And then the right hand comes over the top and the fingers bend down inside like this, and we make our hole here. Make sure you don't go down too fast. What you want to do is make a little test hole first. And if the test hole appears to be okay, there's not a lot of vibration, then you can follow through down. Actually, the inertia of this wheel spinning tends to keep your fingers in the middle if you allow that to help you. And so let's go this way then. We're going to go down a little. Make sure that your hand is resting on the right hand is resting on the left hand. Remember, if you're left-handed, everything would be reversed in this, like this. Okay, so let's go down a little then, make a little hole. I can use 2 or 3 fingers, but never one. One finger does not have enough control to go down. You'll lose control that is often with one finger. So here we are, we're starting to go down. Make sure that you go down fairly vertical, that the wall, you don't want to lay the hand down and make this into a bowl shape yet. Right now all we're trying to do is to get down, keep the wall. There is one other way to go down, and that's the way I use actually. It's where you form a triangle with your hands and arms on your knees. So I have 2 braces, and then this hand goes down in. The sponge feeds water, and then sink on down. Okay, you want to find out how deep you go, because there's a certain depth that beyond where this thing will not become a pot. You'll ruin it if you go all the way down to the wheel head. So what you want to do is stick your needle down there and measure. And we want 1/2 inch, and that's approximately what we have right there. After we have checked our depth and it's correct, then we are ready to open this piece. And the opening does determine the shape of the final piece. If we open wider, you'll have a bowl shape, and if we keep narrow, that is enough to get our hand in there so we can work the inside wall. We probably can make a tall piece. Is probably the area which I'll go in here. But we need to open a little bit more, and let's go back to the original way we opened. One of the methods was to use our thumb. Well, we can also open the pot this way too. Is simply by basically squeezing both hands, taking and then expanding the inside outward. I mentioned before that this is a little bit too much clay to do that comfortably. So then let's go to the second method, which is this way. Our left hand is braced on the clay. Our right hand is sitting on the left hand, and then we go down to the bottom and we pull, and basically both hands are moving. You're not necessarily just squeezing the clay, you're pulling it open. And then the method that I open is the triangle system again, bracing on legs, and then water feeding from here, and then just pulling open. And that's about as far as I want to go. It's enough to get my hand inside comfortably and work the clay on the inside. Okay, this is the structure now that we have established for the beginning of the wheel throwing piece. One of the most popular and probably the best ways to raise the clay is to have one hand on the inside and hold the sponge on the outside, and not to use the whole sponge. We don't want to put the whole sponge on the outer surface, but we want to create a kind of a little ball on the sponge, and it will act against the pressure of the inner hand. So they want to be opposite one another. One thing I advise students to do is to take the left thumb and put it over the top of the right thumb, so that you have a consistent, almost scissor-like mechanism which will gauge your both hands to operate as one. And so what we do is we take a little bite, kind of a little push down on the outside and inside both, and we come up with that. And you'll see a line moving up. That's what we want. On the inside, I'm going to now come in a little bit. I'm going to recess inside a little in order to give the inside hand a little bit of a handhold. This also, I have found, tends to helps to get the bottom thinner than it normally would by slightly decreasing the size of the bottom. This is normally a problem with beginning throwing. So this will help you a little. Don't go too deep in there, but you'll see that it will help you. Okay, let's go back again, and we'll see that a little line is moving up, a little kind of indentation is moving up. Notice I'm moving fairly slow. Don't just shoot up. Take your time and make sure that you stop at the very top of the piece. Don't keep pressing, because what you'll do is you'll make a point on it, and that will be misleading to you. You won't know the proper thickness of your wall. So keep this going. I've often had students have asked me how much pressure is applied on the outside compared to the inside, and I will tell you that it's probably just slightly more on the outside. Because this is revolving, the centrifugal force tends to want to push the piece out, and therefore, in order to compensate for that, there's probably a little bit more pressure on the outside. Let's go up again, and again try to keep your arms very steady. I want you to notice that my left arm is no longer braced on my leg, but it's braced to my body. I have it up against my body. My right arm is still braced to my leg. So often that is what you have to do, because as the piece gets bigger, it's difficult to brace both arms. I haven't talked about the speed of the wheel, but it's important to keep the wheel going fairly fast. I don't mean to the top speed of the potter's wheel, but to fairly fast. If you go real slow, as you're seeing right here, often when you move from one spot to the other, you won't affect the clay all the way around the circumference of it, and that's when you throw the clay off. In order to really keep it on balance, you must make sure that it's going at a respectable speed. Through experience, you begin to find out what that speed is, but I can tell you that it is rather faster than you think. Okay, I'm going to do what is called collaring, and that is where you literally choke the clay, just as you did when you were centering the clay. This time you want to kind of push in from the top here, and we want to bring it back in. And what this does is that it brings the clay back towards the center of gravity, where we can keep it a little bit better balanced. If it gets out too far and spreads out too far, we tend to lose control of the clay. So we always want to keep it toward the center of gravity. Come up again. What we're doing and where we're headed now is to a basic cylinder, and that is just a straight up and down kind of stovepipe shape, and that will be the basic shape that you will use in most pieces. But you want to make sure that stovepipe shape, that the walls are fairly thin and everything is correct on the piece before you can go into the actual shape, the design of the piece. As I come up the wall, I bring some uneven clay that is sitting on the side wall up to the very top, and therefore you'll see that it kind of wobbles up here, and we want to cut that off. It's basically very simple. Grab a hold of the rim, put the needle over your thumb and in the direction of the spin, and just go in slow. Just take your time here till you touch your thumb on the other side, and then you lift. It's a very simple process. This helps keep the clay on balance. And now in order to get some moisture on the inside, I'm going to let it ooze down the wall so that it's kind of like feeding automatically as I move up. As you can see, my cylinder is beginning to form. I still have some thickness in the wall. Often I change sponges, get one that I can get in a little bit tighter. It's at this point when I began thinking where I'm going with this piece. I have to decide down the line here somewhere, and this is a good time. I can be thinking, well, do I want to make a bottle form, since I'm set for that about now? Do I want to make a vase? So kind of working out some of those details. I still have a little thickness down here at the bottom. That's why I'm continuing to kind of thin down here. And I think with that pull, looks pretty good inside. Inside I got to clean it up a little. If I happen to close this piece off and make a bottle form, I want it to look good inside, even though I'm the only one that may know what's in there. I wanted to make sure that it looks good even though no one can see in it, but it's important to me. And now I'm going to form this into a bottle form. I'm going to start by collaring just the very top to start to bring this in, and then I may make this bottom part rounded. So you have to do it in increments. You can't do the whole shape all at once. And where I start to press in is slightly below where I want it to go in, but just applying the pressure very, very lightly. And sometimes this collaring can look kind of spooky because the clay looks like it's going to just simply totally go out of control. I advise my students to look inside the piece and not worry what's happening out here. You want to worry that it doesn't open up on you or whatever, but I'm saying to not to panic. That's the main thing. Just look inside. Don't worry about what your hands are doing. I have a little unevenness up on the top here. I'll go ahead and cut that off again. And now I'm going to get back inside. I can still get my hand in there. Ooze a little bit more water on that side wall so it'll feed down. And now I'm going to think of the shape that I want. And I think I see a kind of a rounded shape out here. And I'm going to throw the clay in the direction that this imaginary shape I've created, and let's see what happens. We're going to do the throw. There's more pressure on the inside now because this shape will have to come out. I may not be able to do it all in one push, but we'll start with one. And you'll see that it's expanded out a little bit more. We'll go back down and pick out a little more pressure on the outside, trying to keep it under control. Well, let's take a look at that. Is that what we want? Sometimes I kind of get up and walk away from it, take a look at what we have and see if it looks to be what we're after. I think I need a little bit more. I'm going to pick up a little more clay down here. Come on in again. We're going to collar a little bit. Now you'll notice the clay is getting fairly thin. As we go outward, the clay tends to get thinner and thinner. So I have to be a little bit more careful here that that I don't muscle the clay, that I gently persuade it to go where I want it to go. Okay, we want to now use a tool that'll help us to shape this, and it's called a scraper, and it is a metal, a tin piece that can be bent to help us on the contour. We put one thumb on one side and the fingers on the back side, and by bending that we can get a contour. If I bend it slightly, you'll see, and lay it up against the piece, put my hand behind here, I can force the clay into that contour. So all along the way I can determine the shape of this piece by pushing from the inside into that little contour I've created. And if we wanted a slight indentation concave area, we would simply use the rounded part of this, such as this. If we wanted a flat edge, which is probably where I want to go with this, I would just simply lay the flat edge on there. There's also another tool. It's a wooden tool that'll do the same thing and yet a little bit more stability. Cut this top off one more time. Take a little of this excess clay that I've created down here and just scrape that away. Kind of just... A lot of this clay on the base is going to be trimmed off. When we take this piece, on another occasion, we're going to let it dry a little, and then we're going to turn it over and carve a foot into this piece so that it is then a finished piece ready to be fired. Okay, so this is the basic shape. The next step will be to put this in the damp room, let it dry for a few days, and we will trim a foot on it. Meanwhile, we've got to move it to that stage, and we're going to cut the bottom off. We're going to take a wire and run it underneath. I'll take a little smaller one here, and I'm going to feed some water right in front of that so that I can drag the water down through underneath. And we're going to make several passes at that because we want to make sure that that is totally broken free of the wheel head. Okay, once we got that clear, we're going to get some lifters, and these are little cut out pans of tin that we will slip underneath. One thing about these is you want to make sure that they're absolutely clean so that they don't cling to your pot. The other thing is that they're wet so that they will slip under fairly easy. I will bring back off my pan a little bit, and we want to bring these together and shove them under. Try to slide this a little bit so you can get the pot broken totally free from the wheel head. And we need to pick this up at the overlap. You notice I have an overlap here on the pans. If we just lift both sides of these pans and try to pick the piece up, what will happen is that this will become an accordion. We'll smash it and it won't work. So we want to make sure that you're totally underneath, and then we can pick this up. I'm going to put it on a bat. And usually one pan comes out fairly easy and the other one always tends to be stubborn. I tell students, just put your hand down here near the bottom and pull it out. And that is our finished piece. We'll take it to the damp room now and let it sit in there for a few days to harden up a little bit. And we'll bring it back out and trim a foot on it, and it'll be ready for firing. After we threw our pot, I took the pot and put it in a damp room. This is a room that has a humidifier to keep the humidity at a certain degree because we want our pot to dry slowly so that it doesn't crack. If you were doing this at home, you would, if you had an old refrigerator, or even plastic will work, where you can allow the humidity to evaporate slowly. We want our pot to be what is called leather hard. The glossiness has left it, and also it is now, when you touch it, it is not tacky, and that means that the clay is strong enough to support itself, and yet it is still a fragile piece, so there must be care in handling it. I placed the pot on the wheel head, and we need to center it in order to be able to start our trimming, and what we're going to do is trim a circle in the middle here to support the piece. In order to start our process, you would take a look at the rings on your wheel head and determine the centerness as close as you can by just looking at the rings, that they look like target rings on the wheel head. But that's only the first step, because then we take our needle and we hold it up to the piece, and notice that I'm holding the needle in the direction of the spin opposed to the clay coming at you. It's moving away from you. And I'm going to move the needle into the piece until it touches and leaves the line. And what I'm trying to do is to find the centerness by using this system of creating a line on the piece, and then move away and take a look at the line, and you'll see that just so I'll make this easier, I'll draw a line on top where the line begins, and I can see it on this side. So the line goes this far around. Now what I need to do, and there is no line on this side yet, go to the center of our line, which is approximately right here, the middle of these two, and you kind of draw a little arrow to give you an idea. Try to figure out about approximately in the middle. And this is where we want to push. We want to push in the direction of the arrow, just slightly, because if you go too far, you'll be on the be taking it out of center on the other side. Erase everything, hold on to the piece so you don't knock it off, and spin it again, and do it again. It takes about 2 or 3 times to get it right on. This, you'll notice that the line this time comes from here to here, and it is almost entirely around the piece, and that means that when we get it entirely around the piece, that the piece is centered. So right now I'm going to put another arrow here, go toward the middle, align it in front of me so I can push, slight little push, and it's probably on now. Or let me put it this way, it's as close as it's going to get, even though the pot is slightly off center. Okay, now once we have it centered, we're going to take some coils of clay on the base, and we're going to push them in both at the same time from opposite directions, because if you press only one, you'll push your pot out of center again, and you'll have to go through the procedure again. Follow your hands around so that they're always opposite each other, Then we want to do it 2 different sides. Make sure we're well anchored. Does not take a whole mountain of clay to anchor this down, but it does take sufficient clay so this thing will not wobble on us. Okay, now there's a couple things that we're going to want to do. First of all, this piece is not level on the bottom, and we can tell by doing lines on the bottom too. I'm going to hold the tool very steady, and we'll find that we're marking only one part of this, and that's the high side of it. And so, in other words, this is the high side, this is not level, and we're going to have to level the bottom before we can put our foot in. Okay, the first tool we're going to use is called the ribbon tool, and we're going to, this is the initial trimming tool. And now, this is the difficult part, is that we need to keep our hand steady and not follow the clay up and down, because if you do that, you're going to end up right where you are now. You won't level it. So you've got to hold the tool very steady. I would say anchor your arms on either your legs if it's a low pot, or on your body the way I'm doing on a taller pot like this. And let the clay come up and meet the tool, and so that you're only raking off the high side. I'm working approximately, if you look at this as a clock face, as you're looking at it, 12 would be here and 6 down here. I'm working about 3:30 here, and that's a good place to work, going in and or out. Doesn't matter which direction you go. You can either go from the center out or from out in. It doesn't matter. The important thing is to keep that tool steady and don't follow the uneven contour of the clay. Now, if I wanted to level a little bit, this is the tool I'll use, called a paring tool. It's a shape like a pear, and actually your grandmother may have used this tool to core apples or pears with for canning. It's a really nice tool for leveling. I don't recommend trimming with this tool simply because it has so much surface on there that I sometimes have students knock the piece off. So, and you can see how nice and level we are. I'm just knocking off the high side. After we have leveled the top, and this is fairly level now, we want to get our roundness on the outer edge here. We use the end of this ribbon tool, and I'll go ahead and create a, kind of take a little of the shoulder off, the inset a little bit. Makes the pot look a little better if we recess the base. Not all pieces want that, but this particular shape I think will look better. And we'll go back to our paring tool here to even out the little edges there. Knock off some of our lines that we created. Now, just to get our direction, I want to make my foot right here. This part will be standing up and this will be taken out slightly. And again, we go back to our 3 o'clock or 3:30 focus and move in or out again. And have the wheel going plenty fast. That's always important, to have the wheel moving fast enough so that you don't so that you get a good base. If you move so slow, when you move your hand, you don't make a full circumference. It will show up there. Keep the wheel moving. Not to the full speed, but fairly fast. Go back to our ribbon tool. Okay, and what I like to do is round the foot a little bit so that it doesn't have any hard edges, in case when you get all finished, this pot can sit on a nice table and it won't scratch it. And the base is done. What we're going to do then is just sign our initials here, and we're going to put 98. After our piece is trimmed on the potter's wheel, we allow it to dry a few days, and it will go into an electric kiln where it is Bisque fired. And this will go to 1836 degrees Fahrenheit. After it comes out, I'll glaze the piece, and then we will fire it in a gas kiln, that is, and we'll come over here and see our finished product. This has been glazed with a Sinsha, an Asian glaze. Been fired to 2350 degrees Fahrenheit, and basically that's the end of the process. After seeing this wheel throwing video, don't rush out and buy a potter's wheel. I would advise you to take a class in a community college or adult education. Wheel throwing, a lot of my students, as they tell me, and I know it can be frustrating. It is a very enjoyable thing to do, and I put it on the same scale as transcendental meditation. Once you get into it and learn it, it is very, very enjoyable. But there are those beginning phases where it is frustrating, and you have to kind of bring your mind and your body together to be able to produce these pieces. But if, as I tell my students, you got to get over the initial frustration. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the wheel throwing demonstration, and I also hope that you'll try this activity. I think, as I said, if you can get past that frustration point, you'll find this a very enjoyable activity. See you around.